Have you ever wondered what goes on inside the mind of a narcissist? What drives their behavior, their need for control, and their inability to truly connect with others? What if I told you that there's a shocking truth about narcissists that they will never, ever admit? Not even on their deathbed. This isn't just about their inflated egos, or their constant need for admiration. This is about something far deeper, far darker, and far more revealing about who they truly are. By the time you finish reading this, you'll have a completely new understanding of narcissism, and you might even see the narcissists in your life in a whole new light. So buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. Before we dive in, I want to invite you to join me on this journey of discovery. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from it. Understanding narcissism isn't just about recognizing the behavior in others. It's about protecting yourself, your mental health, and your relationships. So, let's get started. Narcissists are masters of deception, not just of others but of themselves. They construct elaborate facades to hide their true nature, even from themselves. But here's the shocking truth: deep down they know. They know they're not as great as they pretend to be. They know they're not the center of the universe. They know they're flawed, broken, and insecure. But admitting that? That's something they will never do. Why? Because their entire existence is built on a fragile house of cards. And admitting the truth would cause it all to come crashing down. Imagine living your entire life in fear of being exposed, in fear of someone seeing through the mask. That's the reality narcissists live in every single day. Let's start by understanding what narcissism really is. Narcissism is more than just being self-absorbed or vain. It's a personality disorder characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. But here's the kicker: narcissists are not born this way. They become this way as a result of their environment, their upbringing, and their experiences. Often, narcissism is a defense mechanism, a way to protect themselves from the pain of feeling inadequate or unworthy. But instead of dealing with their pain, they bury it deep down and create a false self, a self that is grandiose, superior, and untouchable. This false self becomes their armor, shielding them from the world and from their own insecurities. But here's the thing about armor: it's heavy. It's exhausting to wear. And deep down, narcissists know this. They know they're not the invincible, perfect beings they pretend to be. They know they're just as vulnerable as anyone else. But admitting that would mean facing their deepest fears, their deepest insecurities, and their deepest pain. And that's something they simply cannot do. So they double down on their facade, becoming more grandiose, more controlling, and more manipulative. They surround themselves with people who will feed their ego, who will validate their false self, and who will never challenge them. But no matter how much admiration they receive, it's never enough. Because deep down they know it's all a lie. Now let's talk about the narcissist's need for control. Narcissists are control freaks. They need to control every aspect of their environment, every interaction, every relationship. Why? Because control gives them a sense of security. If they can control everything, they can prevent anyone from seeing through their facade. They can prevent anyone from discovering the truth about who they really are. But here's the shocking truth: their need for control is a sign of their deep-seated insecurity. They're not controlling because they're powerful. They're controlling because they're terrified. Terrified of being exposed. Terrified of being vulnerable. Terrified of being seen as anything less than perfect. But no matter how much control they exert, they can never escape the truth. The truth that they're not as powerful, as perfect, or as invincible as they pretend to be. And then there's the narcissist's lack of empathy. Narcissists are often described as lacking empathy, and that's true to a certain extent. But here's the thing: it's not that they're incapable of empathy. It's that they choose not to empathize. Why? Because empathy requires vulnerability. It requires opening yourself up to someone else's pain, someone else's emotions, someone else's experiences. And that's something narcissists simply cannot do. To empathize would mean to let down their guard, to let someone else in, to risk being seen for who they really are. And that's a risk they're not willing to take. So they shut down their empathy, they shut down their emotions, and they shut down their ability to truly connect with others. But deep down they know what they're missing. They know they're missing out on genuine connections, genuine love, and genuine relationships. But admitting that would mean admitting their own inadequacies. And that's something they will never do. Now, let's talk about the narcissists' relationships. Narcissists are notorious for their toxic relationships. They love bomb, devalue, and discard their partners with alarming regularity. But here's the shocking truth. They don't do this because they're evil, or because they enjoy hurting others. They do it because they're terrified of intimacy. Intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is something narcissists cannot handle. So they create a cycle of idealization and devaluation to keep their partners at arm's length. They idealize their partners to draw them in, and then they devalue them to push them away. This cycle allows them to maintain control, to avoid true intimacy, and to protect themselves from being hurt. But deep down they know what they're doing. They know they're hurting their partners, they know they're sabotaging their relationships, and they know they're missing out on true love. But admitting that would mean admitting their own fears, their own insecurities, and their own inability to truly connect with others. And that's something they will never do. And then there's the narcissist's need for admiration. Narcissists crave admiration like a drug. They need constant validation, constant praise, and constant attention. But here's the shocking truth. No amount of admiration is ever enough. Why? Because the admiration they receive is based on their false self, not their true self. Deep down, they know that the admiration they receive is hollow, that it's based on a lie. And no matter how much admiration they receive, it will never fill the void inside them. It will never make them feel truly worthy, truly loved, or truly accepted. But admitting that would mean admitting their own inadequacies, their own insecurities, and their own need for validation. And that's something they will never do. Now, let's talk about the narcissist's manipulation. Narcissists are master manipulators. They know exactly how to push your buttons, how to get what they want, and how to make you doubt yourself. But here's the shocking truth. Their manipulation is a sign of their own weakness, not their strength. They manipulate because they're afraid of being exposed, afraid of losing control, and afraid of being seen for who they really are. But no matter how much they manipulate, they can never escape the truth. The truth that they're not as powerful, as perfect, or as invincible as they pretend to be. But admitting that would mean admitting their own fears, their own insecurities, and their own vulnerabilities. And that's something they will never do. And then there's the narcissist's inability to take responsibility. Narcissists are notorious for their inability to take responsibility for their actions. They blame others, they make excuses, and they twist the truth to avoid accountability. But here's the shocking truth. Deep down, they know they're responsible. They know they've hurt others, they know they've made mistakes, and they know they've caused pain. But admitting that would mean admitting their own flaws, their own imperfections, and their own humanity. And that's something they will never do. Now let's talk about the narcissist's fear of abandonment. Narcissists are terrified of being abandoned. They cling to their relationships, they manipulate their partners, and they do everything in their power to avoid being left alone. But here's the shocking truth. Their fear of abandonment is a sign of their own insecurity. They're afraid of being abandoned because they know deep down that they're not as lovable, as worthy, or as deserving as they pretend to be. But admitting that would mean admitting their own fears, their own insecurities, and their own need for validation. And that's something they will never do. And then there's the narcissist's inability to change. Narcissists are often described as being incapable of change, and that's true to a certain extent. But here's the shocking truth. They don't change because they don't want to. Changing would mean facing their own fears, their own insecurities, and their own pain. It would mean admitting their own flaws, their own imperfections, and their own humanity. And that's something they will never do. So they stay stuck in their patterns, repeating the same toxic behaviors over and over again. But deep down they know they're stuck. They know they're repeating the same mistakes. They know they're hurting themselves and others. And they know they're missing out on a better life. But admitting that would mean admitting their own fears, their own insecurities, and their own inability to change. And that's something they will never do. Now let's talk about the narcissist's death. Even in death, narcissists will never admit the truth. They will never admit their own flaws, their own insecurities, or their own pain. They will never admit that they were not as powerful, as perfect, or as invincible as they pretended to be. They will never admit that they were afraid, that they were vulnerable, or that they were human. Because admitting that would mean admitting that their entire life was a lie. And that's something they will never do. So what does all of this mean for you? If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, if you've ever been manipulated, controlled, or hurt by a narcissist, it's important to understand that it's not your fault. Narcissists are who they are because of their own fears, their own insecurities, and their own pain. They hurt others because they're hurting inside. But that doesn't mean you have to put up with their behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect, with kindness, and with love. You deserve to be in relationships that are healthy, that are supportive, and that are based on mutual respect. And you deserve to live a life that is free from the toxicity of narcissism. So, if you're dealing with a narcissist in your life, remember this: you have the power to set boundaries, to protect yourself, and to walk away. You have the power to choose your own happiness, your own well-being, and your own peace of mind. And you have the power to create a life that is free from the influence of narcissism. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Because you deserve to live a life that is full of love, full of joy, and full of authenticity. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. I hope this video has given you a deeper understanding of narcissism and the shocking truth that narcissists will never admit. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with anyone who might benefit from it. And remember, you are not alone. There are people out there who understand what you're going through, who care about you, and who want to help. So take care of yourself, protect your mental health, and never forget that you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness.